Hey everyone, welcome back to I Know a Guy. I'm Anthony, and this is the podcast where connections thrive. Each episode, we spotlight inspiring entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals doing amazing things. Together, we'll grow your circle, spark collaborations, and discover new opportunities. Today, we're meeting Andrew Berger. He's an award-winning audio editor and founder of Podclimb, a podcast production and repurposing company helping coaches and founders turn their voice into high-impact media assets. With credits on films, narrative podcasts, and branded content, featured at South by Southwest and Tribeca, Andrew blends technical mastery with storytelling strategy to elevate meaningful conversations. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm good, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
No, it's excited to have you on. I love having people on that are in this space because then I get to pick your brain because I jumped into this not knowing anything, still don't. Just did a real bunch real fast and was like, okay, I'm doing it in the dumbest way possible, but I'll figure it out as I go. So I
Don't
like
worry.
talking to people like yourself that are experts. But to start off, where are you calling in from? Where are you located?
So, calling in from the wild city of New York City, it is hustle and bustle. I live in my little shoebox apartment and hear protests. I hear cops. I hear crazy things out my window. But that's kind of what keeps you alive and keeps you on the hunt in New York City. So it keeps you on edge. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not great.
Yeah, there's always something going on out there, but awesome. Well, have you been there forever? Or are you newer to the area?
So I moved here about 4.5 years ago to start my audio career. I'm from Philadelphia. I started recording bands and writing my own music and kind of thought, you know what, maybe I could really hit the big time in New York. And I went to school for audio, was able to work in a full, essentially work in a movie theater, which was a studio where we mixed movies, and then I kind of went off on my own, started Podclimb, and here we are today.
Awesome. Well, you've been there long enough that you have your cons. Let's say you have some friends coming in town that have never visited before. Where are you going? What are you doing? And what's for dinner?
So, honestly, my friends all make fun of me, but I love walking around Soho. It is, historically an art gallery district, but now it's premium shopping and cobblestone streets. So it's just very picturesque and beautiful to walk around. And it's funny to kind of see the kind of melting pot that is New York City, because everyone who visits New York City, there's so many different cultures and people from around the world that come to Soho to experience it. So I love it for the for the pretend, the window shopping, and just seeing all the people around us that make New York, New York. This vibrant culture.
Okay.
And for dinner, it really depends what we're feeling, but I do love taking the trek out to Flushing, New York, out in Queens for Chinatown, because it's just it's like you're in another country out there. It is wild. English is the subtitle there, so it is very cool.
Okay. Awesome. So a lot of Asian food then is kind of your go-to if you're having friends over, or any one place in particular.
One place in particular in Flushing, it's called the New World Mall. So they have essentially a food court in the basement of Asian food from all across different regions of China and just that part of the world. And you just try different things and things that might sound crazy. But I guess if we're gonna eat in Manhattan, I do love Little Italy. It's just classic, generational Italian restaurants, red gravy restaurants that you'll always have a good meal there. It's always consistent, and it never lets you down. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like asking people, from big cities. It's like, oh, where do you go? It's like, well, we have everything. So
Yes.
like kind of seeing where they land because where I grew up, it was like, oh, where do you go? Well, we have the barbecue place, or we can order pizza from the gas station, or we're cooking at home. Right. That's
Got
good.
you.
So it's always funny to ask. But okay, awesome. Well, what can you tell us about what you do? What about what is it about Podclimb?
So Podclimb, it started out kind of as a way for me, selfishly, to want to get to work closer and more intimately with my clients. I worked at a studio where I was very much I was working for my boss who dealt with the clients, so I would kind of sit in my room all day and make footstep sounds for movies, which was fun and great, but gets a little lonely in a small dark room. So now I get to work with clients who come to me and they say, I have a need, podcasting is the thing, and I have something to say to my audience. So I help them kind of figure out not only who their audience is, but I help them develop their message so that it'll attract their audience. So I kind of help them find their ideal avatar. And usually these people are either coaches or business owners. And, essentially, if you're in the thick of it as the business owner, you have all the answers, but it's hard to really put your mind in, put yourself in the in the shoes of the ideal client. So I kind of help them think backwards effectively. What would I need, or what would I be saying if I needed your service or wanted your service? So after we develop that, then we start building out the idea for the podcast. We come up with ideas for your content and your pillars. So what are like the 4 things that you could, that will be your go-tos, and how can you break that down into pieces of content? And then we create the podcast episode and break that down into potentially, honestly, 30 pieces of short clips to share across social media platforms. And it only compounds from there. So you're just living in a sea of content. And then, 3 months in, you're like, what should I post today? And essentially it's dealer's choice, or what am I feeling? Like, what do I feel like posting today?
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of people fall into the I have nothing. I don't know. I don't know how this works. I don't have anything to share. I don't know what I'm supposed to share. So it definitely solves a lot
Gotcha.
of problems. But awesome. Well, what is it that you love most about what you're doing now?
So I love that I'm able to marry my passion for audio production and creativity with helping people. Because I love being that catalyst when someone's like, I have something to say, or I need to do something, but I just don't know how to do it, or how to say it, or how to get it out there. So then I'm kind of that catalyst or that interpreter. So when I worked in the recording studio, it was me and the director would say, I need this. And I would be, the monkey that presses the buttons on the sound console, which, looks confusing and scary. But once you break it down, it's really not. And it's honestly the same with Podclimb. I'm able to break it down for the client into this multi-step process that creates clarity. So instead of being essentially this weight that you're carrying, it's like, oh, this is, let's do this step and then this step. And then through that process, you find clarity and you're like, oh, why didn't I think of talking about X when I thought I wanted to talk about Y? And it just creates kind of this think tank of creativity between me and the client. And we all just get excited and hot and bothered by it. And we're just like, we need people to hear this. We need to help the world. And that's what we're going to do.
That's awesome. When you're looking at like your average client, what does the avatar of that look like? Or what are the pain points that somebody might be going through that if they're dealing with X, Y, or Z, you're the person they should be talking to?
So a lot of it is, most of the clients are people that say, I see people with podcasts, or people in my world have podcasts, but I know nothing about creating content. I'm, a little camera shy. Uh, and also, I don't know exactly what to say because these people are saying exactly what I would say. Um, and also with coaches, I would say it's a little different because coaches I find always have something to say, but they just don't know how to organize their thoughts and how to kind of get it onto the video platform. So it's 2 things. It's one, kind of being a mediator to get the ideas onto the page, essentially writing an essay, let's say, but in video format. And then it's also being the tech person that recommends equipment to them and tells them what software to use, and I coach them through that to the point where they could record on their own, and then they send it to me to manage their files and edit their files, so that all they have to do is sit down for an hour a day and they say, hey, Andrew, here's the media, you do your magic, and do your voodoo and send me all the clips at the end, at when you have them ready. And that's what I do. I want to be the person where someone's like, I'm not interested in becoming an audio editor or a video editor or a professional podcaster, let's say. I just want people to see my face, resonate with my content, and like me and connect with me and become my client.
Awesome. What about power partners? What are other professionals or industries that you synergize really well with, or you find a lot of ability to collaborate or refer back and forth with?
Power partners. Here, can you explain that a little bit more? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, when you're looking at other industries that maybe you both service similar clients, that you can kind of help one each other in different spaces, or
Hmm.
if you come across somebody that's like, hey, you know what, I know a guy, let me introduce you, and then vice versa, people that you can collaborate with.
Of course. Honestly, other podcast production companies and coaches I find are great kind of word of mouth power partners. So I work with one coach who he's a men's coach. He's fantastic. I'm actually going to go to one of his masterminds at the end of the month. Very excited, to learn more about myself and meet and network around. But effectively, um, he's like, "Hey, you helped me create this podcast and this platform. I work with these high level entrepreneurs and these business leaders. He focuses on men and saving marriages and some really intense stuff. And he's like, he says these people need media, these people need podcasts. So, they'll see my podcast and and I'll recommend you to them because you walked me through this process. And also with podcast production companies, a lot of it is essentially I know a guy. Some podcast production companies either have too much work and they can't take on another client, and it's you feed the food chain. It goes back and forth. A client asks for something specific that I might not be able to help them with, so I'll send them to another friend of mine who can fill that need. So it's an economy, it's an ecosystem of friends helping friends out, and just you know promoting people in the best possible way.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. What advice would you give to a new or aspiring entrepreneur?
I would say I would say for YouTube University, I would say focus on the knowledge or like on like three creators to take advice from that you resonate with. Then two, I would say start reading books that either they recommend or are recommended for the field you're interested in getting into. And also like find a niche. Like do one thing really, really well. And also don't feel the need to reinvent the wheel. Um, don't just because there's 5,000 other businesses that might be doing the same exact thing that you want to do does not mean you don't have the ability to receive the same amount or more of the market share than the pre-existing companies. And even don't be afraid to reach out to those existing companies because they're X amount of steps ahead of you, and people always love giving back to their community. So I'm in touch with a podcast production company that's a couple years ahead of where I see myself being. So I reached out to the owner and I said, "How did you do this? How did you get here?" And now he and I are close friends. We speak almost daily and just talk about our wins and kind of coach each other because he is better or more experienced in the sales and marketing and business aspect, where I'm more well versed in the audio high level production. So we kind of feed off each other. So he'll call me about how to do specific audio setups for his clients, and I'll call him about a potential client that wants to start working with me and how to angle it so that the offer seems more tempting for them.
Absolutely. No, that's all fantastic advice. It's just having the abundancy mindset. There's so much out there. You're crazy not to look at other people, see what they're doing, what works for them. And like you said, not trying to reinvent the wheel, just you're on the menu of options. So what's going to set you apart is, yeah, you all do the same thing, but you're the special bit, right? So
Yes.
reaching out to other people that are in different industries or the same industry and finding ways to work together and collaborate, it all folds back into itself. So having that abundancy mindset is just fantastic advice that we probably need to say it louder for the people in the back, but that
Yes.
just comes with maturity of business. So awesome. So
Of course.
how can founders turn one podcast episode into a month of content?
So this is an awesome question because I've met so many podcasters who are so nervous because they'll see a price tag for a podcast production company. They made the decision they're going to hire someone because they don't want to become a video editor or an audio editor, and they don't want their they don't want their intern to be managing it, let's say. um, for whatever reason, it's so many stories, but you know one podcast episode, I like to break it down as in being a musician or Spotify. Nobody releases full length albums anymore. Like, no one releases 11 songs at once unless you're Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran, let's say. Um, People release singles, which is one song. So it's not even an A side or a B side anymore. It's one song. And then the next month there's another song. So I have that same mindset with podcasting. So we'll record the entire 30 to 45-minute length episode. And I do recommend 45 minutes be your top length because, millennial Gen Z attention span is just getting shorter and shorter. And yes, your information is valid, but there's still a smaller amount of people looking up the difference between a 401k and a Roth IRA. It's a very niche crew. So, which is fantastic because you found your people, but you need to make sure these people are watching long enough to get that information. They want that information now or yesterday. So, with a 45-minute long podcast episode, I love to break it down into 30-second clips to a minute 30-second clips and anything in between that ratio so that you have buzzwords hitting the viewer right off the bat, so that draws them in. And then if you want, you could add like B-roll to kind of keep the eyes on you, because let's face it, virtual podcasts are fantastic, but when you're in like a podcast studio, like in person or on a set, uh, it adds that extra layer of this person's like really podcasting, or this person's X, so they've like really, really invested into this endeavor. And the B-roll, just some sprinkles on top. So, it could also be considered like an ice cream sundae. You got to start with the ice cream. So you got to start with good content that resonates, and then you can add the chocolate sauce and the sprinkles and the bananas with the in-person, the B-roll, the newsletter, and, only scaling from there.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic advice. A lot of people try and do too much too quick.
Agree.
What would you say is the biggest mistake people make when they're launching a podcast?
I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed when you say you want to start a podcast, because a podcast feels like, oh, this serious thing, which is what I love about it, because it gets people more interested in speaking with you because it's a platform. But also, one of my favorite things is the Modern Wisdom podcast, Chris Williamson's podcast. I found a photo of him filming his first episode of the podcast. So his background, he was a nightclub promoter. It's a very different field than what he is, his like public images today, I imagine. Um, he started in a conference room with one microphone angled at his guests. So that tells me a couple things. It tells me, one, he had no idea what he was doing. And two, he knew he was onto something because he had some big deal guest who was a mountain climber, But then 3, he just knew that it was something he had to do to grow his platform, whatever that platform vision was all those years ago. So when you're starting a podcast, you know, you're not going to be like the Joe Rogan podcast. That if that's your vision, then really I'm not the right person to be working with you in the first place. It's all about the small increments. It's, buy a $30 webcam. I'm using a $30 webcam. Just make sure it has 1080p HD quality, and you could buy a microphone online for $50, or even use a headset, a gaming headset, and that's perfect. It's at first it starts with the content. Have high quality content, and then have high quality audio and high quality video, and then the strategy, I would say. But I think I probably mentioned that incorrectly. I think the strategy is probably most important, so you can have a clear vision, because so many podcasts don't make it past episode 5 just because they're like, oh, I've done 5 episodes. I haven't seen any uptick in anything. I don't have 10,000 listeners. And also, I think listeners or downloads is a bit of a vanity metric, because would you rather have 100,000 average listeners or 10,000 listeners who want to buy your services or product? So, it's a very different mindset for the audience and the purpose of your podcast.
Yeah, that's all great advice as well. There's like 4 or 5 different great takeaways in there. So go back and make notes. Don't be afraid to start messy. Yeah, that's a big one. It's like, well, I'll wait until I'm good until it's not how anything works. So why would it work here?
Right.
So fantastic advice. So how does professional audio editing impact your brand's credibility?
So I think it gives me much of a huge advantage over, let's say, people who are like have an idea of what the editing is, because I could tell you how to get high quality audio with, low quality gear, let's say. Like, you could have a $30 microphone and a cheap webcam, and I could tell you exactly how to angle it and set it up, and how to set your room up so that there's no echoes or, any excessive noise in your room. But then also, if you happen to have echo, or your room sounds, in the audio world, they say it sounds boxy, let's say, I could pull out all of the sounds and EQ your voice to sound like you're on the Howard Stern show, let's say. And also, audio branding is such a thing. So if, let's say you don't like your voice. I mean, John Lennon famously didn't like his voice, which is why his voice on a lot of the Beatles songs sounds not like a real person's voice. If you listen closely, there's like an added effect to his voice. With my expertise, I could change your voice essentially to sound deeper, let's say, or make it sound less honky, and just make it sound like fuller. So I think there's just a huge advantage to just being in the work environment and the professional field of the audio world, because it's less of a worry. Because we can worry more about your branding and your impact and your social media presence than the audio. The audio is essentially now an afterthought, because I know how to do anything necessary to make you sound professional.
Absolutely. So I like this question. I think it's the most important question that everybody in business for themselves should be able to answer. And that is, why you? What sets you apart from everybody else out there doing something similar?
It's a great question. So why me is I just have this, I find I have this ability to connect with people. And I'm not here to sell, I'm not a snake oil salesman. I'm here to promote you and to see you become the best version of you possible. And I'm able to do that through my expertise in audio editing and podcast strategy. Like, I'm not here uh, just trying to collect another check. I will be there overtime. I'll take your calls. I want to be there for you. I'm your partner in this. And when I work with clients, I'm very much in it with you. I'm not just your marketing arm. I'm there. I'm pitching ideas. I want this to be a success as much as you do. Um and I think of course there are other people like that in this field and in every field, but I genuinely think I'm able to create a very close connection with my clients, dive deeper with them, help them hit levels that they didn't think they could hit, and just be their cheerleader and work with them on the podcast and just be in their inner circle, be their partner in their world.
This industry is massive, and
Yes.
as an expert, you could spend all the time talking about all of this. But in general, is there anything that I missed or I failed to ask that you wanted to add?
um Off the bat, I really can't think of anything, to be honest. I think uh I mean, maybe one thing we could talk about is like being authentic. Authenticity is now like a buzzword in the personal brand and LinkedIn world. And how do you set your personal brand different? But that's also like a really hard question to answer. And I'm not sure if you think that should be if that scratches the itch, or if that should be someone they should reach out to you or me about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, having these conversations with you, you certainly are authentic.
Thanks.
And for people that want to know more about this industry, that like the authentic, you, that like Andrew, how can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
So they can find me on my website at podclimb.com, and they could email me at andrew@podclimb.com, and they could also find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn page is Andrew Berger, and even my IMDb page, which is a little fun thing to check out. Just look up my name, Andrew Berger, sound editor, to get a little thrill that you're working with someone who's worked on movies.
Perfect. Yeah, if anybody would like to get a hold of Andrew, absolutely do it. I'm going to put all that in the show notes so it's super easy to find. And like I said, he's exactly the same in a one-to-one as he is here, so don't be shy or nervous. He's just a person. Very authentic, very knowledgeable. You're going to walk away knowing more than you did going in. So I absolutely recommend having that conversation. If anybody would like to get a hold of me, you can find me at ikag.me. You can find more episodes, subscribe to our newsletter, and connect with our growing community of awesome people like Andrew. If you or somebody you know would like to be interviewed, you can also apply on our website. But Andrew, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to share with us. I really hope we all go out, have an awesome day, and grow our circle.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure.